What is the most out-of-touch thing an older person has told you? I've suffered from endometriosis since being a teenager. Every month I got such cramps that I couldn't even stand up, and sometimes so severe that I blacked out of pain. My mom never got the idea to take me to a doctor or a gynecologist. She thought I just dramatic and wanted to get out of going to school. I suffered for a few years. I remember once my mom told me, "When I have a child it will go away." That's because it was what she was told by her doctor in the 90s. I went to a gynecologist and got prescribed meds that have helped me a big time, and I can now function like a normal human. My job is talking to Medicare members all day every day. I could tell you a lot of things. But generally, I get at least 4 calls a week from people who legitimately think that Medicare should and does pay for housekeeping. So many of these people think that once you turn 65 you never have to pay for any medical expenses, no co-pays, free transportation, etc. It's really bad around open enrollment because of all the ads talking about the grocery utility card. The ads make it seem like everyone gets it, but really you have to be like destitute broke as to qualify for that. When you're feeling better. Dad, I'm disabled, because my body is made from your and mom's shitty broken DNA. I didn't get any help, he said, as he walked into a building with his dad's name on it. He embezzled all of grandpa's money and bankrupted the company and went to jail, so I can't work there. Also, he says he did it because God told him to and it was the right thing to do. And I should thank him for setting such a good example, as 9-year-old me watched my dad get taken away in handcuffs for a crime he absolutely committed. I was 19, still living with my parents, and talking about my boyfriend, and my older coworker asked if we were going to get married. I told her I don't think either of us are really financially secure enough or old enough to take that step yet, and she patted my arm and said, "You're 19, you're an adult now. The money will come. Do it now before you regret it." I was just baffled. The money will come? From where? I'm 33 now and getting married this year to a different person than back then, and I'm so happy I never took that advice. My grandmother is always about how I should make children, be some, and how my sis should support the household on his income alone. She's born in the 60s, was a som with 3 kids in a big nice house while my grandfather was a coal miner. So once again she is on about me having kids soon. I explain that our apartment is too small and I haven't been able to get full-time job to put money aside. I have no interest in having kids, but she just doesn't understand it. She told me to just get pregnant and it will sort itself out. Young people have no pride left. Why do they think it's okay to still live with their parents at 20? The average age to move out of a parent's home in the UK is 35. Because there's a rental crisis and a housing crisis, especially in non-English countries, partially because the retired English keep buying second homes in Wales, Scotland and NI. Wages have barely increased, but rent and mortgages have increased extreme amounts, and this is because of their generation. Why older people don't understand this concept is beyond me. Anything my dad says about money. His mom was a widow and remarried an eventually wealthy man, who helped my dad bankroll his own business, which my dad turned into a considerable net worth. He thinks everyone has access to startup capital because it happened to him. He thinks everyone should be at his level financially. He thinks everyone pays cash for everything. He is so out of touch with reality because it stopped affecting him for so long, and he just doesn't understand why everyone doesn't do what he did. Go door to door to businesses you wanted to work at and demand to see a hiring manager. Don't leave until you do. That's a fast pass to a trespass notice, not a job. It's all online now, and automated resume readers will decide if you've matched enough keywords in your resume to the job posting. Then you get to talk to a first-level HR person in a screening interview. If they like you, you might get to talk to the hiring manager. If it's a German company, add like 10 more interview steps before and after. I survived napalm bombings during the Korean War. I can survive some stupid head cold. Final conversation I had with my grandfather, asking what he did to prepare for the COVID-19 pandemic. He and Grandma passed away because of it 6 months later. He was anti-smoking and felt that those who passed away were those with weak lungs from years of smoking. It was their punishment for torturing non-smokers according to him, and he didn't need to worry because as a non-smoker, his lungs were strong enough. My boomer ex-father-in-law was ashamed of the fact that my son, his grandson, is epileptic. He tried to forbid me from referring to his seizures as seizures, and instead call them episodes, so people wouldn't know. No. I'm not going to trivialize a potentially life-threatening condition so that your golf buddies don't think less of your descendants and subsequently, your gene pool. Calling in an episode will prevent him getting the urgent medical attention he would need in an emergency. 2 different customers gave me advice on how to save for my child's college. Person 1 just set aside a couple thousand a month, invest it, and by the time they go to college, it's all paid for. Do I look like I have thousands extra at the end of the month? Person 2, what you do is buy a house in the city your kids want to attend college. By the time they are ready to go, you own the house, they don't have to pay rent. You don't say? Just pay for 2 homes? Awesome, it's so easy. My dad, a wealthy boomer in his 60s who's had the same job for over 30 years. People your age have never experienced real economic turmoil like my generation has. The market has been kind to you. Me, his 31-year-old daughter, dad's first name, what the fuck are you talking about? I've experienced 3 major recessions and I'm just in my 30s. You had to line up for gas in the 70s, while most of my friends can't get medical care or mortgage. He hung up lol that the King James Bible is the only true and authentic Bible, and further stated that Hebrew and Greek were a dead language. As a theologian, I had to remind him that both languages are still used today. Also had to try and tell him how the King James has only been around since 1611, and how other much more ancient documents exist. Also had to inform him how we only have a canon of the Bible anyways because of the Catholic Church. C was at a large gathering of extended family and some of their friends, many of whom I did not know. If there's one thing grandparents love to talk about, it's their grandkids. So many of these people who I didn't know at all, knew a lot about me. Well, I was introducing myself to a few people and one of them, a man of probably 80, goes, "Oh, you're the one that lives out in San Francisco. You got a lot of Orientals and queers out there, huh?" Minimum wage jobs are entry level, mostly for high schoolers to get a foot in the working world. If you want a better job you have to work for it. So I said okay, so, if it's for high schoolers it should run on high school time, right? So, every minimum wage job should be closed from 7:03 and from 8 p.m. on? So, who's making the coffee? Or fixing your hamburger for lunch? He had no response and quickly changed the subject. White family here. We had some family friends over from childhood, both black. We were watching some basketball all together as a family. Enter 94-year World War II veteran grandfather. He stands there for a moment, looking at the guests in the room and then focuses on the TV and then loudly exclaims, "Wow, it's a jungle out here, there's even a bunch of monkeys on TV." The room was dead silent. We were mortified. I've become the mediator between my boomer mom millennial daughter. When my mom was complaining that my daughter never takes her advice on parenting, I asked her if she took the advice her older relatives offered when she was raising me. Her answer, without any irony, was but their advice didn't apply because times were different by then. You just answered your own question, Ma. Edited spelling. Around the end of this summer I was delivering groceries to this older woman's car and she was making conversation and she was like, "When are you going back to school?" And I replied, "Haha, I'm actually taking a gap year, so not anytime soon." And she was like, "What are you doing here? You should be in Europe. I'm delivering groceries to your car for 15 an hour. Are you paying for that plane ticket?" When I was in my 20s I was in a serious relationship with a black man and my grandma sat me down and told me that no white man would want me after this. She was honestly concerned about my well-being and didn't mean it harshly. I just shrugged and told her I wouldn't want to date anyone who judged me like that anyway. My grandma was born in the 1930s to give some insight into her rationale. My dad owned a auto repair shop and my little brother had worked for him as a mechanic for 10 years. My dad was complaining about my brother wanting to be paid 30 hours. My dad told me when he was working at the Porsche dealership in the mid to late 70s he was only making $6 an hour. I showed him that with inflation he was making $32 an hour at 19 years old and 1 to 2 years of experience. Someone once told me they just buy new cars to avoid a lot of car issues that used ones have. That's nice. I'll be sure to stop paying our bills and taking care of a child to pay a ridiculous monthly bill on a new car. They are empty nesters with their mortgage paid off from when house prices were reasonable in the first place and 2 high-paying jobs in the house. It's my full-time and student loan debt, although the only way I can have a decent job is with a college education, so by their logic, I don't deserve a college education because I couldn't afford it out of pocket. Also, disregarding the fact of signing contracts at 17 for student loans is completely bizarre and should be investigated more. When my husband and I were living in apartments as were his 2 brothers back in 2021, my Phil said he didn't understand why none of us just rented or bought a house because he didn't think getting into the housing market was hard. He's also been renting a house for $900 a month from his longtime friend for almost a decade. I was a cashier at Petco, and a regular customer mentioned he saw me walking using the bus all the time, and that if I came to his dealership, he'd give me a good rate on a car. Then he handed me his card, with the dealership logo on it. The Fiat dealership. I wish I'd looked at him and said, "I make $7.90 an hour, sir." My mother said to me just a few days ago that a down payment for a house isn't that hard to save up for. I told her I barely have $5,000 saved up so far. She insisted that that is more than enough. I had to stress that 20 down has been the norm in our area since the 2008 crash. She hasn't bought property since the 90s. My asshole scoutmaster demanded that we all carry a dime in the watch pocket of our scout shorts. Why? We could make a payphone call. Dumbass did not know it was not 1950. Eisenhower wasn't president. Mr. Fuckface wanted us to carry wood frame backpacks from World War II, old Rockhold canvas pup tents, and cast iron frying pans. I was washing the floors in the entrance of an apartment building. As I walked with heavy buckets, an elderly woman walked towards me. "Honey, choose a strong husband to carry buckets." My husband was frail, he died. The guy standing next to me coughed to hide the laughter. "Don't take it, he's frail." When I was 30 and single and everyone was beginning to worry I was left on the shelf, my former stepmother's dazzling advice to me: never call them, let them call you. WHO, Carol? Who are these eligible men that I'm throwing myself at and scaring away? Happy to say I did in the end find the one. You should just send your resume out and see if anyone is hiring. This during the Great Recession after I had just graduated and couldn't find a job after months of applying. Not surprisingly, sending my resume out to companies did at least cry. My parents were flabbergasted I had no luck. An older family member and I were talking American football. We were discussing a certain wide receiver that was doing very well. Scoring touchdowns a lot, returning punts and kickoffs for touchdowns. Said all the usual things. Then that family member said, "And he's white." I just stared.